Claudio. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Tava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanantam Satguru Pranatosh Maham Om Shanti 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 Om. Okay, we begin today from the evolution of the elements. Unless any of you have any question or sharing, anything to say. So the evolution of the elements, it is the verse 60, page 77. The first product, Vikara, of Maya is space. Space provides a field in which objects and beings can come into existence, can grow and can die. It accommodates things. Space is not a standalone principle, but derives its existence from consciousness, which is its substratum. So we are being introduced to Mr. Space. Meaning out of consciousness by the power of Maya, there is Mr. Space being produced as the first production, the first aspect of creation. It's the most subtle element, and it serves as a field in which objects and beings, and inert objects, and sentient object, they just start getting its formation. They start coming out of what? Space, the most fundamental element. It provides the field, and it borrows its most basic property for the subsequent element. So what is the property of space? So space has the most fundamental property, which is sound. Okay, we will see why we know that space has as its property sound. Of course, that space fundamentally, it is consciousness. It is fundamental true nature. The true nature of everything is also consciousness. So what is the nature, the absolute nature of space? Is consciousness. What is the secondary or relative or apparent nature of space? The apparent nature of space is accommodation. So what is nature of something? Is something without which that thing is not that thing. If space was not the most subtle, it would not be able to accommodate, to penetrate, and to pervade everything in the universe. So it's the most pervasive, okay? Therefore, its nature is accommodation, okay? So we have a slight the distinction there between the nature of space, the secondary nature of space. That's why I brought in the primary nature of space. The primary nature of space is consciousness. It comes out of consciousness, but its apparent or secondary nature is accommodation, okay? Which is slightly different from space property. Space property is sound, as we know. So space, being very generous, it provides the field in which all the other objects, all the other principles develop, coming into existence until it goes away, dies from existence. It accommodates everything. Space is not a standalone principle, therefore, the space derives or gets or its existence from existence consciousness itself. Brahman provides the existence of space, and then space is going to provide the universe with its accommodating nature, and then other things are going to be coming out of space. Why? Because out of space comes Mrs. Air. So we have Mr. Space and Mrs. Air, and then they get together, they get married, and then they make a lot of babes, and the babes are the three elements, fire, water, and earth. How about that? We should put it in our test books. I'm not going to make jokes anymore because nobody laughs at my jokes. I'm going to be serious.
I think you're very funny, Arlindo.
Okay. So let's say what else the Swami says here. Vikara, which means product, it means also modification. Vikara is a product of Maya, the first product of Maya, Vikara, product, but it also means modification. Vikara also means modification. Okay, in this verse, it means product. So the first modification of consciousness comes through Maya. And what is the first modification? What is the first duality? It's consciousness and space. Space is its first product. Sometimes we see some texts saying that the most fundamental duality is consciousness and Maya, because Maya is a power that nobody can really understand where it is located. But we know it's just a potential, it's the seed of Mithya, let's say. So, but then when Maya brings about its first baby, it brings space, you understand? And then we have space, and then space is the first duality. It came out of consciousness through the power of Maya. Now we have consciousness, existence, and space. It's the first modification occurring within conscious existence. Okay, are we following? Anything to add? So it means modification as well. It means a product. In this verse, it means both. It could be better applied to the meaning of product, a product of Maya. It has no nature. No, it has the nature of accommodating things, as we know. Before we can produce things, we need a space or a place in which to contain them, to accommodate them, to keep them. So it's a container, it's a space, it's a place. In order for something to exist, it needs to have something. I mean, I cannot help but to use the word space again. We need the space on which, So Mr. Space is there to provide space for everything. It has the nature of accommodating things. Before we can produce things, we need a space to accommodate them. Its nature is not existence. Its nature is not existence. Its nature is accommodation. It borrows existence from awareness. Okay, we have to be careful with this passage here. So I would say, what it means, its primary, real, true nature is existence, but it is apparent nature as far as Mithya, the universe, is concerned, is accommodation, as we have covered before, okay? Its nature is not existence. It's not a clear, accurate statement, because we know that the nature of everything is Satchitananda, consciousness, existence, right? Is the fundamental, true nature, absolute nature. But then we have the Mithya nature, let's say, it's secondary nature, it's Maya nature, or Mithya nature, which is accommodation. So it means to say its nature is not existence. Now I understand better why Swami P. or James has put that sentence there without elaborating. its nature is not existence, means to say that it does not have existence of its own, okay? So the fundamental nature of the jiva is what? Is the self, is consciousness. But does that mean that the jiva has a self of its own? Yes and no. Yes and no. So the existence of the jiva, is the existence of Brahman. Brahman considers existence to all expressions produced or products of Maya, and the jiva is a product of Maya. It's a complex product. So everything owns its existence to consciousness. Of course, space does not have the intelligent intellect to realize that its true nature is consciousness. Therefore, it says, my nature is existence. Yeah? And here the text says, its nature is not existence. Although, if it had an intellect, it could realize that, in fact, it is existence, because everything resolves in existence as existence, right? So its nature is not existence, means to say that it does not have its own existence, and we can tell it. We can tell it, although it exists as Brahman, but there is another side of existence, which is consciousness. And we know that space is not conscious, right? We are conscious of space. Space is far bigger, wider, vaster, and pervasive than the jiva. It's much more unlimited. Yeah? Space is very powerful. It's vast. Yeah? But we know space. Space does not know the jiva, right? So the jiva has something that the space does not have. Space is lacking what? Consciousness. And consciousness is the other aspect of existence, okay? So it's clear that this existence of space is borrowed, quote unquote, is borrowed or landed from existence from Brahman, or borrowed from Brahman. We cannot borrow anything. It's considered by Brahman. So the existence does not have a conscious, space does not have a real intrinsic conscious existence, but it borrows existence from Brahman. That's what it means, okay? So what is the difference between space and the Jiva-Atma? Because Jiva-Atma, it has something very unique, which is the reflected existence that expresses itself as reflected consciousness. And consciousness is the knowing, is the chit aspect of Brahman that allows the Jiva-Atma, this intelligent biological organism, to realize and know that I am that conscious existence. You understand? Everything is conscious existence. I mean, this is important to understand how big, I mean, what a great opportunity it is, how important Jiva-Atmas are in the creation. You understand? Because it's the only configuration, the only product of Maya, which with the chit aspect that allows he or she to understand its true nature, and then say, no, my nature, number one, is conscious existence. And my nature, my second nature is the body-mind complex with its attributes. So only the Jiva-Atma has this possibility, okay? This, I mean, as far as our planet goes, but we don't know. Maybe there are some other creatures that look like animals to us, but have a more intelligent intellect than us, which maybe all of them are self-realized. Who knows? If we go in a cave and then we find a different civilization of weird creatures and they are all self-realized. We don't know, right? We don't know. And they don't make war. They live in harmony with one another, It borrows its existence from consciousness. So we're talking about space. The nature of consciousness or awareness, the self, is existence. So different names for the same principle, Brahman. The nature of awareness, which means the self, is existence. So it says that the nature of Chit is Sat. How funny this one. The nature of Chit is Sat. The nature of Sat is Chit as well. And the nature of Ananda is Sat Chit, and so on. So everything at different aspects of one thing without a second thing, which is the nature of Brahman, our very true nature. The nature of awareness, which is the self, is existence. And there is no space in the self. Okay, so now we have another situation here. We have consciousness, and Maya is in deep sleep. Maya is out of the picture. And then there is no products of Maya. Maya is not producing, this products, these configurations. And then there is not even space. Okay. And then it says that the nature of awareness is existence. It exists as consciousness, as knowledge, and there is no space in it. So how can we say that there is no space in it if the world, which depends on space, is said to be superimposed in conscious existence, isn't it? We experience the world of name, colors, and form, and it is superimposed on consciousness, but then it says there is no space, there is no air, there is no fire, there is no mithya in consciousness. There is no mithya, there is nothing in consciousness. So it means it's another indication that it appears to be every time that it's brought, it comes up as a superimposition, but it's not a real superimposition, because consciousness, awareness, the self, existence is limitless. And being limitless, it does not allow to anything to be there within itself. There are no parts, there is nothing. It's a partless whole, it's a partless, limitless, non-dual whole. Everything is just this conscious existence. And then what happens in there is that space comes, we say, but it does not come in awareness. It comes just as a superimposition, exactly like a mirage in the sand of the desert. When we look more attentively, we see that there is no oasis, there is no water, there is only sand, okay, desert sand. So likewise, the nature of consciousness is existence. And in existence, consciousness, there is no space and there is nothing, because consciousness is without one without a second. Okay, and then all these seconds, are they happening within consciousness? No. They are happening in a suborder of consciousness, which is not real, which exists, but it's not real. You understand? It does not really interact with consciousness, it does not affect, does not do anything to Satchitananda. If it does not impact, if it does not touch consciousness, it cannot be in consciousness. You understand? It's just that Maya produced this, this projection that sometimes people in this modern world like to say, maybe it's a holographic reality and we are living in it. Let's say, whatever, it does not matter, because whatsoever happens within consciousness, and we are this consciousness. Any concept we develop is going to be observed and analyzed and considering within consciousness, right? So there is no space, there is nothing in consciousness. It appears to be, but it's not all the time. Sometimes Maya goes to sleep and then the world disappears. It means what? That it was not really there. Because if it was there, it would be there at all times. You understand? The universe appears and disappears. What it implies? It implies that it's not real, because it's not really there. It's just, it's project and then it's taken back. And then we have the famous Twilight Traveler. he is very thirsty, and he approaches a village, and there is a well. He goes there to get a bucket of water, and then he sees the snake. There is a coil in the bucket, and then it was a little bit dark, but there was a little bit of light, which means to say there was light and darkness mixed together. And that's the problem of the Jiva-Atma. It has, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, light and ignorance, light and darkness. And that's why it's so tough, so difficult to be a human Jiva. Okay, because if we had no Sattva really working for us on the intellectual level, and then there is no question even of karma for us. We are all innocent because we are programs, as James likes to say, like all other creatures. Huh? But no, we have a little bit of Sattva, and Sattva, and Sattva allows us to be knowing, self-knowing, self-aware, conscious beings. And then we're going to know our environment, and then there is Rajas and Tamas operating as well, symbolized by darkness, and then we make mistakes in the way we see the world. We see the true nature of things here. So this guy is traveling, and then he approached the village well, and he's paralyzed with fear because he projects the snake on the coil, on the rope. And then, as always, we have the guru going by. Yeah? The guru always comes when we need. Yeah? So the guru is coming by and say, my fellow, you are making a very fundamental mistake. So you are superimposing. They say, I am superimposing. Yes, you are superimposing. Okay? So what does the Jiva superimpose all the time? That the guru, meaning to say the scriptures, are all the time trying to point out to us, you are superimposed, your body, mind, your intellect on the self, and you believe that these products of Maya are the self. No, the products of Maya is an instrument by which you can know I am that self. But this product of Maya, meaning to say the body, mind construct, is not the self, unless you know that it is the self. You understand, Claudio? How tricky it is? I think by now you understood, huh? And then a guru comes and say, you will superimpose it, and then take a moment, breathe, do some pranayamas, turn upside down, do some asanas, do some meditation, and then make your mind a little bit more clear and look again. And then after 10 years of many sadhanas, the snake is still there, and he looks, and then he says, wow, the snake has disappeared. So, and then he said, yes. So where is the snake now? The snake is gone. So where was the snake before? It was in my own mind. That's what it means. I'm superimposed or projecting, the self, my body-mind complex, my mind into consciousness, okay? So now, in the context here, we know we want to look from a different angle, a very interesting angle. Consciousness is only existence. It cannot accommodate anything. So the guru said there is no snake, it's just a rope. It looks like a snake because of your mind was not sattvic and clear enough. So consciousness is existence, and it cannot accommodate anything, nor need it accommodate anything, because there is nothing other than consciousness than to accommodate. So when we say that space accommodates, we are immediately implying duality, right? So we see space and the objects, it accommodates space and air. The first thing, it accommodates air within its being. Yeah? So when we say space and other objects being accommodated, we are looking to duality. But when we look in terms of consciousness, okay, it only exists, and exists is its very nature, okay, and it's limitless, but it does not accommodate. That's why there is nothing in consciousness, okay? It does not accommodate. It does not have property or attribute, okay? Accommodation is something that is nature, but it's also seen as a property or attribute of space. And he is saying that consciousness does not accommodate anything because consciousness is non-dual, is one without a second. So if there is nothing for us to accommodate, there is nothing for consciousness to accommodate. So what is the question of accommodate? You want to accommodate if there is a need for accommodation, right? So, but we cannot be there, oh, I'm accommodating, and there is nobody coming to visit you. Yeah? So no, you stop trying to accommodate because there is no point, you alone. Yeah? So awareness does not accommodate anything because there is nothing else. You cannot say that the rope accommodates the snake. Can we say that rope accommodates the snake? So in order for the rope accommodates the snake, the rope has to become the snake. It has to pervade or transform itself into the snake. And then the substratum of the snake is the rope, but the rope does not enter the snake. Yeah? We cannot say that the rope accommodates the snake because there is no snake from the rope's point of view. Yeah? So there isn't. From this point of view, there is no snake. From the point of view of the traveler, there is a snake. So the rope is not accommodating the snake. Okay, so who is accommodating the snake then? You cannot say that the rope accommodates snake because there is no snake from the rope's point of view. Likewise, there is no relationship between existence and space. That's a good one. There is no relationship between existence and space, the same way there is no relationship between the rope and the snake. Okay? They belong to two orders of reality that do not really relate to one another. One is satya and the other is mithya. The rope is satya, and the snake is mithya. It's a superimposition. So existence is satya, is space is mithya, is a superimposition, right? So likewise, there is no relationship between space, existence, and space because they are not in the same order of reality, as I said. And they are not equal, and they don't relate, they don't obstruct, or they don't impact one another. And then we have the classic example that a person, a dreamer dreaming, and a waking person cannot have a relationship. That's a nice one. Cuts to the chase. We have a dreaming person, a waking person, and then you say, I want to have a relationship with that lady or that man I dreamed last night. So no, those two figures, they belong to two orders. One is the awakened state, and the other is the dream lover. No relationship is possible. It's possible to have two relationships between two dreaming persons, and the two persons in the dream and two persons in the Vyavaharika, in the awakened state. And then there is a relationship. Why? Because they are in the same suborder of reality, right? But if you need to think in terms of relationship, you can say that it's the relationship of a substrate to the objects appearing in it. So if we want to say, what is the relationship between consciousness and space? We can say, okay, there is a relationship there. Consciousness is providing the substratum of space. It is a substratum in which space is superimposed. But they don't really, how you say the word in English, abstract, or they don't they are in different orders of reality, different sort of and we cannot even say in terms of density or vibration. It's just one is satya and the other is mithya. They can never coexist, in the same way the person, the lover from the dream can never find the lover in the waking state. They can't coexist. Although satya is going to be pervasive and as the substratum of mithya, you understand? But mithya does not really touch satya. Do you understand, Claudio? Yeah. So what?
Very subtle. It's a very subtle distinction, but but it's very useful. But it's clarifying a lot. But it's very subtle.
Yeah, it's subtle, and it's good that we revisit these points again and again, because it's all about us. It's all about the relationship between consciousness and the intellect. You understand? And the intellect is trying to project and mithya in satya and say, okay, I know now my pure mind or whatever is the consciousness I'm looking for, and the consciousness is just the substratum of the mind, of the intellect. You understand? And at the same time, one does not touch the other, although consciousness is pervasive, and as the substratum of the mind. Pervading, I was saying pervading as the substratum of the mind. So the relationship between the substrate of something, substrate of something that appears, is actually no relationship, because they belong to two orders. One is the substratum, satya, and the other is the superimposition on that screen, on that mirror of consciousness, on the mirror on the screen. There are images being produced, but they don't really touch the mirror. They don't really touch the screen in the cinema. You understand? The cinema and the mirror remains clear, but it produces those phenomena. There is no relationship, likewise, between the mirror and the image reflecting the mirror. There is no relationship between the screen and the pictures, the moving pictures project on the screen. Likewise, there is no relationship between consciousness and space. Another example, the blueness of the sky and the sky have no relationship. That's good as well. What is the relationship between the sky and the blueness of the sky? There is no relationship, because the blueness is just an appearance. Okay, it's a phenomenon that occurs within space. The sky is space, and it's colorless. And then why we say there is no relationship between the two? If they were related, one would affect the other. So if they would be related, and then the blueness, which belongs to mithya, would affect, the sky, the space, you understand? And then the space would really get to be blue, because now the blueness, which is just a mirage, a physical phenomenon, would impact the true nature, the nature of space or sky. No, they don't. So they are not related because they don't impact, they don't affect, they don't touch one another. You understand? They don't touch. The blueness and the sky, they don't touch, because the blueness is not real in respect to the sky, right? All different analogies that helps us to get the picture and understand the relationship between consciousness and the mind. For example, which is the most important. We want to come down to that discrimination. The fundamental nature, we are analyzing space because we are looking into the development of this 5 elements, no, in creation, but finally enough, we need to be able to see that there is no relationship between consciousness and the mind. You understand? Consciousness is not affected by the mind, and the mind is not really affected by consciousness. You understand? And they belong to two orders. The property of space is sound. Awareness, consciousness is soundless because there is nothing other than consciousness. So in order to have a sound, I guess we need to have a friction, isn't it? Who is good with physics there? In order to have a sound, I believe there must be duality, a certain subtle level of friction must be there to create sound. Right? So awareness, consciousness is soundless because there is nothing other than consciousness. So having nothing else but myself, there is no question of any attribute. You understand? The attributes are something that comes out of something. You know, you have a principle and the principle has qualities and attributes, okay? So any such attributes implies what? The thing plus certain inclusions that makes up the attribute of that thing. You know? What are the attributes of Mark? So Mark has different talents and qualities, you know, and attributes. Lynn has other attributes and qualities and talents. Everyone is a different put together configuration, okay? So now, when we look into consciousness not having anything, there is not even a second part. If there was two parts like space is really cool because it has only two aspects to itself, okay? Which is itself and sound. Its nature of accommodating and sound. Sound is already an attribute, a quality of space, which means space is not something non-dual because, you know, it is just the beginning of the unfoldment of the entire universe, okay? But it begins from space and it is intrinsic nature as accommodation, okay? And then it comes the attributes, but the point here is to say that sound, sound has spaces, has the property of sound, but consciousness is without any sound because there is nothing other than consciousness. For the sound to exist, to come into existence, duality, friction is required. We need friction, we need duality, and then there is a sound. Thus, space has two properties. Space has two properties, which is slightly different from its nature, apparent nature, secondary nature as accommodation. The properties of space is sound and existence, okay? So now it's interesting that in here, Vidyaranya is presenting existence as it's a property of space, okay? Because in most of our texts, existence is not a property of anything. It is the fundamental true nature, you understand? So, but as we know, every object enjoys existence as well. Why we know that there is such a thing as space? Because space exists. Although we cannot touch it, we can know by inference, by notions that we can intelligently draw inference that there is such a thing as space. Therefore, space is a very, very subtle, the most subtle object, the most subtle product of Maya. And therefore, if there is something such a thing as space, it means space is enjoying existence, borrowed existence, the same way the Jiva Atma enjoys a borrowed consciousness or reflected consciousness. The space is enjoying a borrowed existence, or we could say a reflected existence, okay? Somehow Maya makes the space, being the most fundamental object, to show up and shine with existence, you know? We have to understand that the physical inert objects, they also reflect conscious existence, but we don't see the conscious aspect, but we see this existence aspect. You understand? Because it's made out of consciousness, but it does not have enough sattva, okay? It's not going to produce chitta, but it's going to produce what? Existence. Yeah? So it's everything is somehow, yeah, a reflection of existence. So it's being revealing existence. Yeah? Their existence is being reflected in every inert object. So thus space has two properties, it's said here, sound and existence, whereas consciousness is only existence. So now we are saying that consciousness enjoys existence, but existence is not really the property of consciousness. But here it could be said so, but it's more like it's the nature. The nature of consciousness is existence and vice versa. So space has properties, whereas consciousness has only existence as a property, you know. When you enclose a space, an echo can be heard. That's very interesting. Yeah? Sometimes we know we go in some place and it's somehow there are a block of rock somewhere here, and then the space is trapped in there. And then there is this phenomenon called echo. This reveals that sound is the property of space. Okay? So space is there, and then there is a sound that moves. You understand? Moves, and then we say what? We say that sound comes out of space. You understand? And this is important because in the unfoldment of the 5 elements, we're going to have the unfoldment of the 5 sense organs as well. And out of space, we're going to have to develop, Ishvara is going to develop the sense organ to capture the space property, which is sound. So the ear is a development of space, because space has sound as its property, existence, property, and then immediately Ishvara says, okay, so let's not have anything go wasted. If we have a sound, we need to have a sense organ to capture this beautiful creation of Maya, you know? Sound is not the third property of space, because existence is not a property. Okay, now he's fixing that. So now he say like sound. It's not that space has 3 properties. Okay, so space has accommodation, which I see more as its nature, and then it has sound as a property, okay? But existence itself is not a property of space. Otherwise, every object in creation would have its existence as emanating from itself, as a property of everything that exists, which is not the case. Sound is not a property of space because existence is not a property of any object, not even space. So now there is a correction here. And then Vidyaranya switches accommodation for sound because each succeeding element borrows a property from the succeeding element. Okay. So now it says that Vidyaranya first presented accommodation as a property, and I was saying that it's more like a nature of space. the relative nature, secondary nature of space is accommodation. Why accommodation is not a real nature of, why accommodation is not a real nature of property of space, but otherwise it is the very nature, it's not a property, because in the sequence of the elements, each succeeding element, or how you say, each succeeding element borrows the properties of the previous one. You understand? And we know that accommodation is not passed on to the other elements. You understand? Vijaranya switches accommodation for sound because each succeeding element borrows a property from the previous element. I think there is a mistake there. Air borrows only sound from space. Air does not borrows the property of accommodation. Therefore, accommodation is the nature, the secondary nature or apparent nature of space. The primary nature of space is existence. Existence is not a property of space because existence is not a property of anything. You understand? It does not have, it's attributeless, it's without any qualities and properties. Okay? So air borrows only sound from space, not accommodation, because accommodation is the nature of space. Any doubts so far, any confusion, anything that could be further clarified?
Yes, Arlindo, it says, when you enclose a space, an echo can be heard. This reveals sound as the property of space. But you need sound to create the echo. So space doesn't create the sound.
Well,
there's a sound.
yeah,
Without the sound, there's no echo.
I know, but I thought about that as well. But it might be that within an enclosed area in which space is enclosed, maybe there will be a certain vibration which is going to have a sound to it, you understand? And then when we say something, and then we can see it more clearly, okay? That is my take. My take is when we go in an area like that in which space is enclosed, maybe there is a little sound. And some say that the sound that's there is more like, oh, that you like to say so much, no? So it's the sound is a property, it comes out of space itself, okay? That's why the sound is going to further develop this sense organ, of hearing, the sense organ of hearing that is a product, a development of sound, okay, which is a property of space. Anything, Lynn?
Can you say that Maya's Vikshepa Shakti creates the vibration that is the sound after you have your senses, but that existence doesn't have that simply because there's no vibration in existence. There's no, it's a chala, it doesn't move. It's,
yeah, there is no Maya. That's nicely put, Lynn. I mean, within the space, there is a power in creation, Vikshepa, that's going to produce a certain projection or vibration, and within the space, that vibration is going to create the original sound, the or something like that. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. Now, of course, in consciousness existence, there is no question of any energy, any vibration, any projecting power, and so on. Anything else, Lynn? It's okay, Mark? Anything else, Mark?
No, I don't think so.
I will read it again and maybe ask some questions for Thursday.
Oh, nice. Questions are welcome.
Because there is something that I found a little bit confusing because he talks about third property. He puts and then he puts out existence. So I have to read it again and make some order here and there.
Please do some homework. That way we can enjoy
Okay.
a little bit of a Q&A next Thursday. Okay, the reversal. Now we're going to talk about the power to reverse things. Maya, Maya just deceiving everyone by reversing thing. The power of Maya projects space on consciousness, the self, creating an apparent duality and reversing the relationship between existence and the objects appearing in it. Huh? Very nice, huh? Verse 63, the power of Maya projects space on consciousness, the self, and then creates an appearance of duality. And not only it produces this duality, but reverse the relationship. There is indeed a relationship between space and the objects, or no, and between existence and the objects appearing in existence. Actually, it should say creating an apparent duality and apparently reversing the reversing the apparent relationship, because we already have determined that there is no actual relationship between the self-consciousness and space, right? We have determined that before, right? So reading it again, the power of Maya projects space on the self, creating an apparent duality and reversing the apparent relationship between existence and the objects appearing into existence. What is the reversal there? The reversal is that it's going to make it appear that the objects have their own existence and that existence is a property of every object, okay? So it not only it does superimpose, projects this apparent reality of object, but it makes it look as if this apparent object is a source of existence or have existence on its own. So the relationship between existence, which is not really a relationship, the apparent relationship between existence and object is something important. In this manual, Vedantic manual, is distinguished by the others because it explored the nature of existence to prove that everything exists in existence as existence, and no object has existence of its own. Likewise, consciousness, everything is happening in consciousness, and there is no jiva enjoying consciousness of its own, although in the world of science, people believe that every human being has its own source of consciousness. No, everything is just soak in consciousness and then shine with consciousness and enjoy a consciousness that belongs to consciousness. Likewise, all objects are there soaking into existence and therefore enjoy the property of existing, which is given, okay, landed, let's say, without any interest to these apparent objects. Maya has two powers: concealing power, avarana, and projecting power, vikshipa. Avarana is not tamoguna, and vikshipa is not rajoguna. This is an important point here, and I believe the Swamiji is going to help us out and elaborate it once again here. The gunas come later in the evolution of creation. Vikshipa superimpose space on existence like a projector superimposes a move on a screen. Avarana hides existence. For example, we think that the tree exists by itself, whereas it borrows its existence from existence. This unconscious mixture of existence and objects is called superimposition, adhyasa. We don't realize that the existence of the tree is completely independent of the tree. How beautiful, huh? Huh? Very elegant. Huh? So there is a confusion. It's unconscious confusion. You know, we mix the existence and the object. The existence is one on dual existence, and these objects are superimposed on existence. Superimposed means adhyasa, and we don't realize that the existence of the tree, for example, is free and independent of the object called tree. Right? So now, how can tree enjoy existence if existence is free and independent of the tree? Huh? How amazing, huh? There is such a thing as existence, and there is such a thing as the tree. The tree enjoys existence because we know it exists, okay? But the existence of the tree is free and independent of the tree. But yet it appears that it's not free and independent of the tree. It makes it feel that existence depends on the tree for existing as a tree, isn't it? You see how Maya tricks us and reverse these things? I suggest we get into this in our next class. It's a beautiful subject. Maya has two powers. Let's read it again. We have the Avarana, the concealing power, and Vikshepa, the projecting power. Avarana is not, this is what I'm most interested to look into. This is a very nice teaching. I remember this teaching from Vidyaranya, making these subtle distinctions between Avarana and Tamoguna, and then Vikshepa and Rajoguna, okay? So I'm looking forward to it again. I want to read it, the text, to see if it all pops up again in my mind, those subtle distinctions. The gunas come later in the evolution. Okay, so we have this intrinsic power to Maya, which is the power to project and to conceal. And we often see that the projecting power is Rajoguna. And we also say that the concealing power is Tamoguna because conceals the mind of the jiva. But in this teaching, Swamiji says that no, they are not really the same thing, okay? Because the gunas are coming later on into the picture, okay? So what are the gunas that differs the gunas from Vikshepa and Avarana? Rajas and Tama distinct from Vikshepa and Avarana. So I would say that the gunas becomes a guna when the Jiva Atma come into play, because Jiva Atma, the intelligent Jivas, it comes to complete creation as the agent, the knower, the experiencer. When it comes, and then in its very configuration, this power to create, which out of Vikshepa and Avarana, the three gunas come, and it is these two gunas, Rajas, Tamas, and actually Sattva, by Rajas and Tamas, it's going to be producing the projecting power in the mind of the Jiva, Rajas project, and then Tamas concealing, and then Sattva revealing, okay? So we're gonna look into that next week more in details, and I hope Swamiji here in this book, if I don't find it in here, I'm going to go back to the audio, take notes, because we want to explore this fine distinction, If you say a short woman, the shortness depends on the woman, but the woman does not depend on her height, and so on. Okay, so this is going to give us a lot of material to have a beautiful class next Monday. Okay, and we can also explore some of this as a Q&A this coming Tuesday, okay? Anything else? Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Love you. See you soon again. Namaste. And arrivederci. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alindo. Bye now.